The ranch had become the seed of something unprecedented in galactic history. For the first time, humanity was uniting not under the banner of a single government or ideology, but round the simple principle of independence. They were pooling their knowledge, resources, and determination to create a network of human settlements that could thrive anywhere in the galaxy. And at the center of it all were 3 children who had been starving in the desert just weeks before, now teaching adults how to build the foundation of humanity's cosmic future. The aliens had tried to divide and conquer humanity. Instead, they had given them a reason to come together like never before. 6 months after the first battle, Minji's ranch looked nothing like the simple farming operation it had once been. The original house still stood at the center, but round. It had grown a sprawling complex of training facilities, research labs, and coordination centers. Ships landed and took off every hour, carrying students, supplies, and innovations to human settlements across the galaxy. The New Sonora Academy had become the heart of humanity's transformation. Soaring Eagle walked through the main training hall, watching nomadic Comanche warriors teach zero-gravity combat techniques to colonial defenders, while settled farmers shared terraforming secrets with generation ship crews who had never touched solid ground. Rotation 17. Prepare for launch, announced Jasu over the Academy's communication system. Now 14 and serving as one of the Academy's coordinators, she managed supply runs to 12 different star systems with the efficiency of someone twice her age. In the Advanced Engineering Lab, Deho was working with a team of students to modify a captured Dominion fighter craft. They had stripped out the alien control systems and replaced them with human technology that was both simpler and more effective. The problem with alien tech is they over-engineer everything. He explained to his fascinated audience, look at this targeting system. 17 different sensors doing the job that could handle better. No wonder their pilots can't adapt when something unexpected happens. Minho had become the Academy's expert on defensive systems. His latest project involved creating portable shield generators that could protect entire cities from orbital bombardment. The technology combined Minji's energy manipulation techniques with Comanche knowledge of mobile warfare. The key is not trying to stop everything, he demonstrated to a group of colony engineers. You redirect the energy, make it work for you, instead of against you, like using a river's current to power your mill. But the real test came when long-range sensors detected the largest alien fleet ever assembled. The Dominion Collective had gathered ships from across their empire, including massive dreadnoughts that could destroy planets and carrier vessels that held thousands of fighter craft. "They're not taking any chances this time," reported Captain Hone from her position aboard the Free Spirit, now serving as one of humanity's forward scouts. 300 ships minimum, maybe more. They're bringing everything they have. The fleet that emerged from hyperspace was a sight that should have terrified any reasonable species. Vessels the size of cities filled the void between worlds, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack continents. At their head flew the Dominion's flagship, a monstrous construction that looked like a metal mountain with engines, but when they reached New Sonora, they didn't find a single isolated ranch waiting for them. Instead, they discovered that the entire star system had been transformed into a fortress. Dozens of human settlements dotted the planets and moons, each one bristling with defensive systems and connected to the others by a network of communication relays and supply lines. Asteroid mining stations had been converted into gun platforms. Generation ships hung in orbit like mobile battle stations. "What is this?" demanded the Dominion Supreme Commander, his multiple voices harmonizing in confusion as he surveyed the scene from his flagships. Bridge, every human settlement was self-sufficient, capable of producing its own food, equipment, and weapons. But more than that, they were all connected, sharing resources and information in real time. When the aliens attacked one position, support immediately came from 3 others. When they tried to cut supply lines, backup routes activated automatically. The battle that followed lasted for 3 days and became known across the galaxy as the War of Human Independence. It wasn't a single massive confrontation, but hundreds of smaller engagements spread across multiple worlds. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of conventional warfare. "They're everywhere and nowhere," reported one frustrated Dominion captain as his squadron was scattered by fighters that seemed to appear from empty space. "How do we fight an enemy that turns mining equipment into weapons and cargo ships into warships?" The turning point came when young pilots trained at the academy began using tactics that no alien computer could predict. They flew in patterns, based on natural phenomena. The spiral of galaxies, the dance of binary stars, the chaos of planetary rings. Their movements looked random, but were actually following deep mathematical principles that confused enemy targeting systems. We underestimated them. The Supreme Commander finally admitted in his report to the Collective Council. "They're not primitive, they're adaptable. Every time we develop a counter to their tactics, they change their approach. It's like fighting water." The final alien retreat came not from military defeat, but from economic reality. The Dominion had spent enormous resources on their invasion fleet, resources that were now being wasted fighting an enemy that couldn't be conquered through conventional means. Meanwhile, human settlements were thriving, expanding, and becoming more independent every day. From the Academy's observation deck, Minji stood with Soaring Eagle and the Triplets, watching the last alien ships disappear into hyperspace. The 3 children were no longer the starving refugees who had stumbled out of the desert. They were confident young adults who had helped coordinate humanity's greatest victory. "Did you know this would happen?" asked Day-Ho, now 17 and already being recruited by colony worlds that wanted to establish their own academies, I hoped. Minji replied, her arm round Su's shoulders. "Humans are strongest when we help each other. That's always been our secret weapon." The Comanche Star Nation and the settled colonies had formed an alliance that was already reshaping the galaxy. Trade routes that had been controlled by aliens for centuries were now open to human ships. Worlds that had been declared off-limits were being explored by human expeditions. Technologies that had been jealously guarded were being shared freely among human settlements. "What's next?" Minho asked, watching construction crews begin work on the Academy's newest expansion. "Next, we make sure no one ever calls us primitive again," Soaring Eagle said with satisfaction. "We've proven that humans belong among the stars, not as servants or subjects, but as equals." Humanity had found its place in the cosmic community through a combination of determination, innovation, and most importantly, their willingness to help strangers in need. The galaxy would never be the same. Years later, when historians studied the events that led to humanity's golden age among the stars, they would identify many crucial moments and brilliant strategies, but they always came back to the same starting point: a widowed rancher who saw 3 hungry children stumbling across the desert and decided that compassion mattered more than caution. That single act of kindness had changed the fate of an entire species and proved that sometimes the smallest gestures can reshape the galaxy. The end. The battle raged for 3 hours. Dominion ships tried every tactic in their military handbook, but human unpredictability proved to be their greatest weakness. Where the aliens expected organized resistance, they found chaos that somehow worked. Where they anticipated conventional weapons, they encountered farm equipment that had been weaponized in ways their computers couldn't calculate. The triplets proved to be natural fighters, using their zero-gravity experience to perform maneuvers. That confused even veteran Dominion pilots. They treated the three-dimensional battlefield like a playground, bouncing between cover points and striking from angles that should have been impossible. Their formation is breaking, reported Deho over the communication system. He was piloting one of the smaller fighter craft with the skill of someone twice his age. Confirmed, added Minho from his position in a mobile defense platform that had disguised itself as a water tank. 3 of their heavy cruisers are pulling back. Jasu, operating the main shield control from what had appeared to be a chicken coop, announced, power levels holding steady. These guys hit hard, but they don't think creatively. The turning point came when Soaring Eagle led a direct assault on the flagship's landing zone. Using traditional Comanche horseback tactics adapted for hoverbikes, his warriors created such confusion that the Dominion commander couldn't effectively coordinate his fleet's attacks. "This is impossible," the commander's voice crackled over. "Intercepted communications. Humans don't fight like this. Where is their command structure? Why aren't they following standard tactical doctrine?" "Because we're not standard," Minji muttered, launching a barrage of her own at the flagship's shield generators. One by one, the Dominion ships began withdrawing their formation. Designed for fighting predictable enemies, couldn't adapt to the fluid, improvisational style of human combat. They had brought overwhelming force to crush insects, but the insects had turned into something they didn't understand. As the last warship prepared to leave, the commander's voice boomed across the battlefield one final time. "The collective will not tolerate this defiance. We will return with greater force. You have only delayed your extinction." Minji stepped into the open, her ranch smoking but intact around her. The triplets flanked her on one side, Soaring Eagle on the other, all of them battered but unbroken. "Let them come," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the thin air. Her eyes were hard as the iron in Nusonra's soil, and her smile was sharp enough to cut through alien armor. Humans don't run. As the Dominion fleet disappeared into the star-filled sky, the defenders of the ranch stood together in the settling dust. They had won this battle, but they all knew it was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you cornered humans and called them primitive. They were about to discover that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to give up, especially when protecting the people they loved. Within days of the Dominion fleet's retreat, the sky above Nusanora filled with human ships. They came from every corner of known space, mining colonies from the asteroid belts, farming settlements from distant moons, trading posts that drifted between star systems, and generation ships that had never touched solid ground. The first to arrive was Captain Hone of the merchant vessel Free Spirit. Her ship looked like it had been built from spare parts and held together with determination, but it had traveled faster than any Dominion cruiser to reach them. "We heard what happened here," she said, stepping down from her cargo ramp. "The whole galaxy is talking about the rancher who made the Dominion run." Soon, Minji's modest ranch house became the center of an impromptu convention. Ship captains, colony leaders, and frontier families gathered round her kitchen table, sharing stories and asking questions that revealed just how desperate humanity's situation had become. "They're squeezing us everywhere," explained Captain Dongwu, whose cargo ship had been forced to pay tribute to 3 different alien species just to cross their territory. "Trade routes that used to be free now cost half our profits in protection fees. It's worse in the colonies," added settlement leader Neon. "They've cut off our supply lines, claiming human cargo ships are security risks. We're running out of replacement parts for our life support systems." Soaring Eagle listened to these stories with growing understanding. He had thought the Comanche nation's problems were unique. But every human group was facing the same slow strangulation. The galaxy's dominant species were systematically isolating humanity, cutting them off from resources and technology until they had no choice but to accept alien rule, show them the real operation. He said to Minji. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Follow me." What she revealed made everyone gasp in amazement. Beneath the ranch lay a complex network of underground facilities that stretched for miles in every direction. Manufacturing centers that could produce everything from computer chips to spacecraft engines. Research laboratories where teams of scientists had been working on breakthrough technologies. Storage warehouses filled with supplies that could sustain thousands of people for years. "You've been preparing for this," Soaring Eagle said, watching Minji demonstrate a food production system that could grow crops in pure vacuum using nothing but stellar radiation and recycled minerals. "For 20 years, she confirmed. "Ever since they first told us we were too primitive for the galaxy." The scope of her preparation was breathtaking. Every crop in her fields had been genetically modified not just to survive in harsh conditions, but to thrive in them. Her irrigation system could extract water from solid rock. Her power generators could harvest energy from temperature differences, magnetic fields, even cosmic background radiation. "This isn't just a ranch," Captain Helm whispered, examining a fabrication unit that could build complex electronics from basic raw materials. "It's a blueprint for human independence." "That's exactly what it is," Minji replied. "A complete system that any human settlement can use to become self-sufficient. No more depending on alien suppliers who can cut us off whenever they want. No more begging for permission to travel through their space." She led them to a demonstration area where the triplets were working with some of the new arrivals. Deho was teaching a group of asteroid miners how to grow food in zero gravity using techniques he had learned aboard the Comanche generation ships. Minho was showing colony engineers how to adapt atmospheric processes for different planetary conditions. Jasu was working with ship captains to modify their vessels for extended deep space operation without alien-controlled refueling stations. "The Comanche nation has always moved between worlds," Soaring Eagle said. "Watching is adopted. Children share knowledge with eager students. But you've shown us how to make any world our own." The real breakthrough came when they began combining technologies. The nomadic humans brought knowledge of stellar navigation, zero-gravity manufacturing, and long-term space survival of the settled. Colonists contributed terraforming techniques, planetary engineering, and resource extraction methods. Together, they created something neither group could have achieved alone. "Look at this," Neon called out excitedly. She was working with one of Soaring Eagle's warriors to adapt Comanche hit-and-run tactics for defending mining operations. "If we combine your mobility with our defensive positions, we can protect entire star systems." Captain Dongwu was equally enthusiastic about a joint project with Minji. "Your fabrication technology plus our cargo network means we can set up manufacturing centers anywhere in the galaxy. No more choke points that aliens can control." But the most important development was happening with the children. The triplets had become living bridges between the nomadic and settled humans, equally comfortable in zero-gravity or planetary environments. They spoke the technical languages of both cultures and understood how to adapt technologies from one to the other. "They're our future," Minji said, watching Jasu explain atmospheric processing to a group of young Comanche who had never lived on a planet. "A generation that won't see any difference between space humans and planet humans. Just humans." Word of the gathering spread through underground communication networks that the aliens didn't monitor. More ships arrived daily, bringing representatives from human communities that had been isolated for decades. They came with their own innovations and discoveries, adding to the growing pool of shared knowledge. A former Dominion prisoner named Tae-young brought intelligence about alien military tactics and weak. Nessus, a deep space explorer called Suman, contributed star charts showing hidden routes through unmonitored regions. A team of scientists led by Dr. Kyungman shared breakthrough discoveries in faster-than-light communication that could connect all human settlements. We're not just planning resistance. Soaring Eagle realized during one late-night strategy session, we're building a new civilization, one that doesn't ask permission. Minji agreed. One that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval to exist. Soaring Eagle watched this exchange with growing amazement. His children had always been bright, but under Minji's guidance, they were becoming something more. Young scientists who understood both the ancient ways of working with nature and the cutting-edge techniques of planetary engineering. But he also began noticing things about the ranch that didn't add up. The equipment looked simple on the surface, but when he examined it closely, he found technology that shouldn't exist on a frontier world. Computers that could process data faster than military-grade systems, atmospheric processes that could change the air composition of an entire valley. Power generators that seemed to run on nothing but sunlight yet produced enough energy to power a small city. Where did you get all this? He asked Minji one evening as they watched the children practice growing techniques in the greenhouse. Built it myself, mostly. Some pieces I traded for, others I salvaged from crashed ships. Her answer was casual, but Soaring Eagle caught the way her eyes flickered when she said it. Before he could ask more questions, the ground began to shake. Through the transparent walls of the greenhouse, they could see a massive Dominion warship, descending from the sky. It was 10 times larger than the patrol vessels, shaped like a black cathedral with spires that crackled with energy. The ship landed in the field behind the ranch house, crushing several rows of crops under its massive bulk. Doors opened along its sides, and dozens of Dominion soldiers marched out in perfect formation. But these weren't the regular patrol troops. These were heavy combat units, their armor gleaming with built-in weapons and shield generators. Humans in this sector must evacuate immediately, boomed a voice from the ship's speakers. This system has been designated for collective mining operations. You have 1 hour to gather essential belongings. Minji walked out of the greenhouse, her face calm, but her hands clenched into fists. The children and Soaring Eagle followed her, staying close but ready to run if needed. A towering figure emerged from the warship's main hatch. The Dominion commander stood 8 feet tall, with forearms and a head that rotated on ball joints. Its skin was the color of dark metal, and multiple eyes ranged in a diamond pattern on its face fixed on Minji with cold intelligence. "Human designation Minji Park," the commander said, its voice like grinding machinery. "You will comply with evacuation orders or face immediate termination. This is human space," Minji replied, her voice steady and strong. "We're not leaving." The commander's multiple eyes narrowed, and the air around it began to shimmer with heat. "You are insects pretending to be civilized. The collective has claimed this world for resource extraction. Your primitive settlement is irrelevant. Try me." Several of the combat soldiers raised their weapons, energy building in the barrels. With high-pitched whines, the commander held up one of its for hands, and they hesitated. "You have 1 hour." It repeated, "Use it wisely." The Dominion forces returned to their ship, but the warship remained on the ground. Its weapons trained on the ranch house. Through the viewports, Minji could see more soldiers preparing for a battle. After they were alone, Soaring Eagle approached her. His expression was serious, almost suspicious. "You are not just a rancher, are you?" Minji looked at him for a long moment, then at the children who were watching her with trust and hope in their eyes. Finally, she smiled, but it was a different kind of smile than before. This one had steel in it, I'm exactly what I need to be." She walked toward the ranch house, and for the first time, Soaring Eagle noticed that her simple farming boots left footprints that glowed faintly in the dirt. Whatever Minji really was, she was far more than she appeared to be. And that might be the only thing standing between his children and the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The 1-hour deadline passed like a thunderclap. At exactly 60 minutes, the sky above Nusanor erupted with incoming ships. Not just the single warship that had landed earlier, but an entire Dominion battle fleet. 12 massive vessels descended through the atmosphere like black daggers, their hulls bristling with particle cannons and plasma torpedoes. Minji stood in her front yard, watching the armada take position above her ranch. The lead warships' commander's voice boomed across the plains through external speakers. "Final warning. Human insects, surrender now or be exterminated. Go to hell," Minji called back, her voice carrying clearly in the thin air. The first energy beam lanced down from the flagship, a brilliant column of destructive force that should have vaporized everything in a 100-meter radius. Instead, it struck an invisible barrier 10 feet above Minji's head and scattered into harmless light particles that danced like fireflies in the air. The ranch transformed before everyone's eyes. What had looked like simple fence posts suddenly extended upward, revealing themselves as camouflaged shield generators. The barn's roof split open, and massive gun turrets rose from hidden compartments beneath. The innocent-looking irrigation pipes throughout the fields lifted from the ground, repositioning themselves as they revealed their true nature as anti-aircraft missile launchers. "Children, to the shelter," Minji commanded, but the triplets were already moving, not toward safety but toward the equipment shed where she kept her emergency supplies. "We fight with our family," declared Jasoo, the youngest but fiercest of the three. She emerged from the shed carrying what looked like a toy rifle but hummed with the same energy as Minji's defensive systems. Daeho and Minho followed, each armed with devices that looked like farming tools but crackled with weapon potential. They had been watching Minji work for weeks, learning not just her farming techniques but apparently her combat preparations as well. "You taught us that life finds a way," Minho said, checking the power cell on his device. "That includes fighting. For what matters." Soaring Eagle felt his warrior's blood surge with pride. These weren't his biological children, but in this moment, they were acting with the courage of true Comanche warriors. He grabbed his own weapon from the shed, a modified particle rifle that Minji had apparently prepared for him as well. "If we're doing this, we do it right," he said. "Dominion forces use overwhelming firepower and rigid formations, but they've never fought humans who refuse to follow their rules." The second wave of attacks came from multiple ships simultaneously. Energy beams, missile brushes, and something that looked like liquid lightning all converged on the ranch. Minji's shields held, but warning lights began flashing on her control panels. "They're trying to overload the generators," she called out. "We need to break up their formation. Leave that to us." Soaring Eagle replied. He activated a communications device that connected him to hidden positions throughout the surrounding hills. "All units, this is War Chief Soaring Eagle. Execute pattern Buffalo Hunt." Suddenly, the empty wasteland round the ranch came alive. Dozens of Comanche warriors emerged from concealed positions, carrying weapons that combined their traditional hit-and-run tactics with advanced human technology. They moved like ghosts across the landscape, striking at Dominion ground forces and vanishing before return fire could find them. But the real surprise came from Minji's seemingly simple farming equipment. The irrigation system revealed itself as an underground tunnel network that allowed the defenders to pop up anywhere within miles of the ranch. The grain silos opened to reveal hidden fighter craft, Sleek vessels that looked like they had been built from salvaged alien technology but flew with purely human determination. "How long have you been planning this?" Soaring Eagle asked as he watched one of Minji's fighter craft perform an impossible spiral maneuver to avoid a Dominion interceptor. 20 years. Minji replied, her fingers dancing across control panels that were far more complex than any farming operation needed, ever since the first time they called us primitive. The twin suns of New Sonora blazed overhead as Minji wiped sweat from her forehead. She had been checking the moisture levels in her grain fields when movement caught her on the horizon. 3 small shapes moved slowly across the red dust, stumbling and weaving like they could barely stand. Minji shielded her eyes with her hand and squinted. Children. Definitely children. And they were in trouble. She dropped her scanner and ran toward them, her boots kicking up clouds of rust-colored dirt. As she got closer, her heart sank. The kids looked terrible. Their clothes hung in tatters, and she could see their ribs through, the holes in their shirts. Their faces were hollow, eyes too big for their heads. Behind the children walked a man who looked like he had stepped out of ancient Earth history. His black hair was braided with small metal rings that caught the sunlight. Leather bands wrapped round his arms, and a necklace of carved bone hung from his neck. But what struck Minji most was his eyes, proud but desperate. "Please," the man said as she approached. His voice carried a strange accent she had never heard before. "My children need food." "I am Soaring Eagle of the Comanche Star Nation." Minji looked at the 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, all probably around 10 years old. They swayed on their feet like they might fall over any second. One of the boys had a burn mark on his arm that looked infected. "I'm Minji," she said quickly. "Come on. Let's get you inside before you collapse." She led them to her ranch house, a sturdy building made from local stone and metal salvaged from old spacecraft. The kids practically fell through her front door. By the time she got them to her kitchen table, all 3 had slumped forward, barely able to keep their heads up. "Water first," Minji muttered, filling 3 glasses from her purifier. The children drank like they had been crossing a desert for weeks, which, looking at them, they probably had. While they drank, Minji fired up her food processor. She had learned to cook for 1 person over the past 3 years since her husband died. But the machine could handle larger portions. Soon the smell of vegetable soup and fresh bread filled the kitchen. "Their names are Daeho, Minho, and Tasu," Soaring Eagle said, pointing to each child in turn. "We have been walking for 5 days." Walking. From where? Minji set bowls of soup in front of the kids. They attacked the food like wild animals, barely stopping to breathe. "Our generation ship suffered engine failure 3 systems away. We managed to reach this planet in an escape pod, but it crashed in the wasteland." Soaring Eagle's jaw tightened. "We have been drifting in space for months, surviving on emergency rations that ran out weeks ago." Minji poured more soup. The kids were already holding out their empty bowls. "What happened to your ship?" "Pirates hit us near the Kepler station. They damaged our fusion reactor trying to steal our cargo." Soaring Eagle sat down heavily. "The Comanche Star Nation has 12 ships like ours. We travel between worlds, trading and exploring. We don't usually ask outsiders for help. We don't accept charity easily." He added, watching his children eat their 3rd helping of soup. "It's not charity," Minji replied, cutting more bread. "It's what people do," she meant it. Growing up on New Sonora had taught her that survival depended on neighbors helping neighbors. The planet could be harsh. Dust storms, equipment failures, crop diseases. People who refused to help others didn't last long out here. Through her kitchen window, she could see dark shapes moving across the sky. The Dominion patrol ships made their rounds every few days now, checking on the human settlements. They claimed it was for protection, but everyone knew better. Those ships up there. Soaring Eagle said, following her gaze, they have been watching US since we landed. The Dominion. They've been pressuring all the human colonies to relocate to the inner systems. They say the outer rim is too dangerous for primitive species like us. Minji's voice carried a bitter edge. Primitive. Little Jasu looked up from her soup, eyes flashing with anger despite her exhaustion. That's what they call us. We don't have their fancy technology or their hive minds. We're just individual humans trying to make a living on frontier worlds. One of the Dominion ships broke formation and descended toward the ranch. It was a sleek, black vessel shaped like a teardrop with glowing blue engines. The ship landed in Minji's front yard with barely a whisper, its advanced systems making her own equipment look like antiques. Stay inside, Minji told the children. Let me handle this. Two Dominion soldiers emerged from the ship. They wore full environmental suits that hid their true forms. But Minji knew they were tall and thin with too many joints in their arms and legs. Their helmets had multiple sensor rays instead of regular eye slots. Human Minjipak, one of them said through a voice synthesizer. You are harboring unregistered refugees. I'm feeding hungry children. Is that against your laws now? All human movement must be approved by Dominion authority. These individuals will be processed at Relocation Center 7. Minji stepped between the soldiers and her house. They're not going anywhere. They're under my protection. The soldiers exchanged what might have been glances. You cannot protect them from collective justice. Compliance is mandatory. Try me. After a long moment, the soldiers returned to their ship. As it lifted off, Minji heard Soaring Eagle behind her. You just made powerful enemies for people you barely know. She turned to face him. His children stood behind him, no longer looking quite so weak and helpless. There was something different in their eyes now. Hope mixed with determination. Those aren't enemies, Minji said. Those are bullies. And the one thing I learned growing up on this dust bowl is that bullies only understand one language. What language is that? Minji smiled. But it wasn't a nice smile, strength. 3 weeks had passed since the triplets arrived at Minji's ranch, and the change in them was remarkable. Daeho, Minho, and Jasu no longer looked like walking skeletons. Their cheeks had filled out. Their eyes sparkled with curiosity, and they moved with the quick energy that only healthy children possessed every morning. They followed Minji out to the fields like eager students. The ranch stretched for miles. Across the red plains, filled with crops that shouldn't exist, plants from a dozen different worlds grew side by side in perfect harmony. Their leaves shimmering in colors that ranged from deep purple to bright silver. Look at this one, Daeho called out, kneeling beside a patch of grain that pulsed with soft blue light. Each stalk stood twice as tall as he was, and the grain heads looked like clusters of tiny stars. How do they grow so well in this soil? Minji knelt beside him, running her fingers through the dirt. This ground is mostly iron oxide and silicon. Most earth plants would die in a week, but these beauties. She touched one of the glowing stalks. They eat the minerals that would poison regular crops. That's impossible, said Jasu, the youngest but often the smartest of the three. Plants can't just change what they eat. Adaptation, Minji said, with a grin. Life finds a way. Always has, always will. She led them to another section where strange vines grew in spirals round metal poles. The vines bore fruit that looked like purple diamonds, each one perfectly cut with natural facets that caught the sunlight. These came from the ice moons of Titan 7. Minji explained. Normally they need sub-zero temperatures and methane-rich atmosphere. But watch this. She pressed a button on a small device attached to one of the poles. Immediately, frost began, forming round the base of the plant while the air shimmered with chemical changes. Local climate control. Each plant gets exactly what it needs. Minho whistled in amazement. We tried something like this on our generation ship, but it never worked this well. Our hydroponic space could only grow basic foods. Show me, Minji said. The boy's face lit up. He pulled out a small tablet that looked like it had been built from salvaged parts. His fingers danced across the screen, bringing up holographic displays of ship schematics and growing chambers. See, we used rotating drums to simulate gravity. But the plants kept getting confused by the artificial conditions, and when we tried to grow different species together, they always competed for resources. That's because you were thinking like engineers instead of farmers, Minji said. Plants aren't machines. They're living things that want to cooperate, not compete. You just have to help them find common ground. Over the following days, an amazing exchange began. The children taught Minji about stellar navigation, showing her how to read star charts and calculate jump routes between systems. They explained zero-gravity farming techniques that could grow food in the vacuum of space using nothing but solar energy and recycled water. In return, Minji shared secrets of terraforming that she had learned through years of trial and error. She showed them how to read soil composition with simple tools, how to modify atmospheric conditions on a small scale, and most importantly, how to make plants adapt to almost any environment.